Hey guys, welcome to RC Video Reviews. Hey, if you ever watched that American sitcom called Seinfeld, there's a character on there called Kramer. And Kramer used to just be this kind of spastic character and he'd be like, poof, mind blown. You know, all the time Kramer's like, whoa. And that's kind of how I feel with EdgeTx. Man, after I did the first couple videos on this, I got connected with the developers a little bit and got an opportunity to get to know them and watch what they're doing. And man, I'll tell you, the development pace on this software right now is frantic. These guys are just absolutely knocking the cover off the ball. I mean, the testers are coming in reporting, they're looking at the issues, they're resolving them, they're posting them, they're compiling. I mean, it is absolutely frantic right now. And that's just what I can see on the outside. I don't know, what's going on on their internal, chat sessions or however they're communicating. But I'll tell you what, man, they're really doing a bang up job on this software right now. And we have a lot to cover, So you'll notice I don't have the chat window up like I normally do. And that's because when we start talking about this, I really want to focus on getting through the material. And what I'm going to ask you guys to do, I know there's questions and there's going to be questions as we go through this. What I'm going to ask you guys to do is save them up for me. And because I want to focus on getting through the content first, and then I'll take whatever questions. I'll do the best I can. I'm not claiming by any stretch to have all the information. I'm talking to people. I'm doing a lot of reading. I'm doing a lot of my own work on the radio to try and figure out what's going on. And they've been very helpful. I can tell you that the developer crew on EdgeTx has been very helpful. And I'm just super excited about what's happening here. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the material. So I've got a lot to cover today, and we're going to kind of move around to some different areas, right? I want to make sure we talk a little bit about managing your data, about flashing, and then we're going to definitely talk a little bit about moving around in the system. And I've gotten some insights as to the thought processes on how things are working now, what they intend and how they intend to work in the future. And I'd like to cover as much of that stuff as I can. So let's just get right into it. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to tell you guys, back up your SD card before you even connect the first, download for EdgeTx and get your first binary or whatever it is you're going to do. Back up your SD card. One of the guys actually made a really good recommendation. He said, just get another SD card, put it in there. That's a great idea. SD cards are so cheap right now. You can just take your current SD card out, put a new one in, and off you go. Now, that said, you have to understand that if you just use a different SD card together, you mitigate your risks. Okay, so that's just a fact. But if you're comfortable managing data, there's no reason you can't copy your data off your SD card, put it on your computer somewhere safe, and then go from there, right? You can do that. So the main reason I say that is because you have to understand that when you migrate models to EdgeTx, they cannot be converted back to OpenTx. However, you can flash your firmware back to OpenTx. So that's an important distinction. Your data is now EdgeTx. So firmware, on the other hand, you can go back. So if you do a backup and you decide, hey, I'm not there yet, I want to stick with OpenTx for a while, you can always go back and flash OpenTx firmware and pull your data back in. Okay. So the other key thing to understand is that EdgeTx will be modernizing their model configuration format to use what's called YAML, and that's actually in the code. That's not a secret. It's in there. It's in the code today. So what I wanted to do is I'm going to bring up, if you give me just a moment, I'm going to bring up an image and show you what that looks like. So here's an example of what YAML looks like. YAML. And I'm not sure what the acronym stands for. It sounds like it's probably yet another markup language. But the point about this is that the configuration files going forward eventually will convert to this format. So the idea is a plain text. So if you know anything about the data structure inside OpenTx, they use these binary files. There were some efficiencies with that, but man, the computers are so quick these days and memory is so plentiful that a lot of those reasons for having that are no longer with us. So they're going to be switching to this format. Now, one of the big benefits, there's a lot of benefits of doing this. And I actually had this planned for later in the conversation, but I want to give you a little flavor. Think about pulling down a text file that has all your model configurations and then pulling it into an editor and saying, I want all timers set for 5 minutes. You see what I'm saying? or I want a minute countdown beep turned on for everything. You know, those are things that you might be able to accomplish, plus others, right? You'll also be able to share models from radio to radio and maybe even platform to platform. So there's going to be a great deal of change in modernization and what's going on with OpenTx, okay? So stand by for that. They are going to be switching TML. Now, when that happens, we don't know. And again, you guys have heard me say this 100 times. This is OpenTx, or sorry, open source. These guys are working as a gift, okay? So everything that they're doing is they're giving as a gift to the community. So we can't be pushy. We have to respect the development pace. You can report the issues, you know, feel free to go to GitHub, and they're very welcoming of issues. They encourage feedback. So you just have to understand that there's going to be, you know, a timeline for them to develop. And right now, what they're very focused on are the operational aspects, stability and operations. Okay, that's primary concern. Things that are, and there will be some things that happen underneath the covers that you might not even see, but graphical oriented stuff, it's not like the high priority right now. They're focused on the operational stuff. It's not to say they're not doing graphics, they are, but it's not, you know, they're prioritizing stability and functionality first. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about flashing. There are 3 ways to flash. I've done videos on 2 of them. So the number one way I think to flash for most people, especially if you're comfortable with Companion, is just do it in Companion. All you got to do is connect the radio. You download the firmware, and you just tell Companion to write the firmware, and you can. The one thing that I've seen people having an issue with is that there's a hardware incompatibility. So there's an option in Companion to turn off hardware compatibility check. So that's all you have to do. And if you do that, you'll be able to flash via Companion. That's very simple. I've got a video on the channel on how to do that. Another very simple way is the Edge Flasher. I have a video on the channel on how to do that. The only thing about the Edge Flasher is you might have to download the Zadig tool. Let me see. I think I got an image. I did get an image for Zadig. So if you're not familiar with that, here's what you do with Zadig. You're going to download the Zadig binary. Just Google this, guys. It's not hard. Just say Google Zadig USB. And when you download that, you're going to click on this option that says Options Show All Devices. And then this drop-down list with your radio connected, you'll see STM32 bootloader. And the driver on the left is the native Windows USB device driver. All you have to do when you see this screen is click on this button that says Replace Driver. That's all you've got to do. And when you do that, you'll be able to flash in DFU mode. And I just tested that. I tested that on another little laptop that I have. I installed nothing other than Zadig, did a replacement driver, and then downloaded the EdgeTx flasher, and I was able to flash in DFU mode. Very, very simple to do that. So again, I have a video on how. The only thing I didn't do is show you Zadig. Now you know at least what it looks like. The key is you want that Win USB driver on the right, okay? So that's the second way. There's a third way, and I'd like to show that to you real quick by clicking on the radio. And what I'm going to do is zoom in just a little bit because I really want you guys to see the screen in this case. So let me just zoom in a little bit, and I'll show you how simple this is. And we have to talk a little bit about what happens to your bootloader too, because there are some implications. It doesn't really matter functionally for an end user, but there are some implications you'll want to understand. So we'll click on radio settings, and then notice, oops, I've got my quad plugged in. There we go. Take that off. So we'll go to the SD card, and then there's a firmware directory right here. And you see this one that says TX16S. Now the link, that I gave in the description of the video, there's a link to a direct download of the firmware. I recommend using the flasher because the flasher is always going to give you the most up-to-date thing, and you don't have to go hunt for it. But in the event you're not comfortable, you don't know how, this is the first time, you can go download the EdgeTx that I linked in the direct download in the description. And inside that zip file that you'll download, there's a bunch of different firmwares. Just pick the one that's correct for your radio. In my case, it was TX16S that, you know, a bunch of numbers and then .bin. So once you put that on your SD card, now you have to imagine for a moment that we're in OpenTx, it would work the same way. Go to your SD card firmware folder, and you'll see this binary file. When you see that, you're simply going to highlight it and then long press, and you see that option right there that says Flash Bootloader. That's all you have to do is click on that. And when you do that, what's going to happen is this firmware, the radio is going to install the bootloader for EdgeTx on your radio. Okay. And then once that's done, you'll just get a notification. Okay, that's done. And well, here, I'll just do it. I'm going to flash the bootloader. There you go. That's what it looks like. I have no fear. These guys are doing a great job. I know it's going to work. So flash successful. There we go. What that means is I have the EdgeTx bootloader on my radio. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do, imagine we're still in OpenTx. We haven't installed the OpenTx firmware with this method yet. Okay. All we've done is install the bootloader. The next thing you'll do is turn off the radio, and you're going to press T4 here and T1 here. You just press those in together, and then you turn on the radio. And then once that's on, notice on the screen, you see that EdgeTx bootloader 2.4.0? That means you're in the right place. You did it right, okay? That's what you need to see. And then once you see that, then you're just going to click on this right firmware option, and that's the same exact binary that we use to install the bootloader. It's in my firmware folder on my radio, and all you have to do is click on it and hold. It says hold enter long to flash. So we'll just hold enter long to flash. And there we go. We're writing the firmware. So that's the third way to upgrade the firmware to EdgeTx on your radio. Okay, I've given you all three ways. Those are the only three ways I know how to do it. I think these are all, I think that pretty much covers it. You can do it in Companion. You can do it with the flasher. You can do it directly from the radio. Okay, so there you go. Write complete, return to exit. We'll hit return, and then we'll exit, and hopefully we get a nice logo, EdgeTx logo. There, we got it. I got my throttle warning, yay. I got my switch warning, yay. And there we go, we're in the radio. So there you go, guys. You just saw how to flash directly from the radio. No companion, no edge flasher. I didn't even need a USB cable other than to put that file in my firmware directory on my radio. That's all I needed it for. So radio settings, and then that folder right there called firmware. That's where you put it. And when you put it in there, I probably clicked on the wrong one. When you put it in there, you'll be able to use the radio to flash it. You'll be able to use the bootloader and the the EdgeTx firmware to flash. Okay, so that's it in flashing. The next thing I want to talk about are migration notes. Okay, this is some keys that you want to understand. I already mentioned, but I'm going to emphasize it again because I really just don't want people to be surprised about this. You cannot move your models back and forth between Edge and OpenTx. You can move them from OpenTx to Edge, but if you try and install OpenTx on top of this, OpenTx is not going to know what to make of those model files unless you restore them from your computer. Okay, so that's key. The other thing that you need to understand is that your main screen, when you do a conversion of your models, your main screen stuff, your layout's going to be lost. Okay, that's unfortunate right now, just the nature of it. It's what's going to happen. So when you do a migration, your main screen will be lost. You'll have to set that back up again. The other thing, we just kind of covered this, you need the Edge bootloader. If you're going to flash EdgeTx in bootloader mode like I just did, you need the Edge bootloader to do it. So I showed you how to do that. Go in here, hit firmware, long press on the file, and hit flash bootloader. Okay, so you need to be able to do that first if you want to flash in bootloader mode. If you use the EdgeTx flasher, it will change the bootloader. So understand that. If you use the EdgeTx flasher in DFU mode, it will update the bootloader for you to EdgeTx, and then it'll write the EdgeTx firmware. And then the other thing is the EdgeTx bootloader does allow reversion back to OpenTx. You can go backwards if you want to. You can go back to OpenTx. It works, okay? Okay, that's it for like the logistics stuff, right? Now I want to show you, I want to move around and show you some things. So when I did my first video on this, I did it in live real time. You know, the first time I ever laid hands on the software, you guys saw it. And since then, I've had the opportunity to interact, get some feedback, to get a little training, to do some reading, to play with the radio, and I've learned quite a bit. So I'd like to go back now and show you some things that I picked up that I didn't cover in my initial video. The first one is on the main desktop. I want to show you this really cool little trick if you hadn't seen this before, and that's that think about your cell phone, right? You know how you set up in the telemetry button, you can set up these pages, right? You remember that on OpenTx. Well, on EdgeTx, you can swipe amongst those screens. Now that's a goofy looking screen. I'll cover that in just a minute, but isn't that cool? You can just swipe back and forth on these screens. So I didn't know that the first time I laid hands on this. I think that's very cool. Another thing I want to point out is this idea that widgets on the main screen are now selectable. So here's what I need you to think about. And I want to go over to another screen for just a moment. And I want you to imagine, just imagine for a second, the reason I made this goofy looking screen like this is because I want you to use your imagination. So imagine that this little layout right here, this button is not a channel monitor. Imagine that that's a TBS Agent Lite. Okay, so let's say TBS makes a little icon for a widget desktop. Now you can press on this and you see how there's a blue highlight bar around there. If I press it again, I get an option to go full screen. So when I go full screen, imagine now I'm missing the button. So I'll try it again. Full screen. There we go. So now we're in full screen mode. Imagine that actually being TBS Agent Lite. So how cool is that, right? That you don't, that your desktop, well, you have to long press return to exit. So how cool is that now that your desktop starts to behave a little bit like a phone, right? It starts to behave a little bit like a phone. So instead of, having to navigate to arcane places on the system, you can launch applications right from your desktop. So think about things like Lua scripts, Express LRS, TBS stuff, the iNav Lua, even the one that I had when we started this. And by the way, there's a link to this too. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about this too, but this one called Fly Me to the Moon, there's a link in the description, and you can download this. There will be an opportunity to download this in the future. It's not ready yet. Okay, this is a Lua script. It's not ready yet, but it'll be just like the iNav script where it'll be scrollable. You'll be able to set this as a primary interface. Okay, so I'll give you more information about that in just a little bit. But Jim B40, Robert is his name. He's the author of this software, and the link to his website is in the description. But do me a favor. He's not there yet, all right? He's developing, this is all beta, like beta alpha stuff. So he's still working on it. And this is the kind of thing that you should expect going forward with EdgeTx, is that they're trying to pull Lua and widgets into the way we operate the radios. And that's kind of the key, I think. So I'm gonna get out of here and go back to the home screen. Oops, I think I'm gonna go back to the home screen. I don't know what I did. It's not a page, so it's a Lua script. Of course, now I can't get out of it. But that's okay. I'll just do a quick reset. I'm not sure why I couldn't get out of that. I'm sure I did something wrong there, but I'll just do a quick reset. So anyway, the point, where I was going with all that is that you have to imagine in the future that the screen, these widgets, you can click on them and you see there's a little highlight. I'll click on this one and you should see that blue square. You see that blue square? That's highlighted. So not only can you put it in full screen mode, if you long press that widget, you have the option to go into full screen or to change the widget settings right here from the home screen, which is really powerful, because before the only way you could do that was by you had to hit the telemetry page and then find the page that it was on and then hit setup widgets and then find the widget and hit widget settings. I mean, it was a little more cumbersome, and now you can do it directly from the home screen itself. So, and then again, like I said, I showed you that one example where think about like the iNav Lua or the Fly Me to the Moon Lua that I just showed you, where you'll be able to say, I'd like to see that full screen. You press and go full screen and bam, you're there. And there's another advantage to that too that we didn't have before, and that's when a widget goes into full screen mode like I just showed you, there's an opportunity in that mode to use key bindings. I think they have the ability to say, okay, when we're in that widget and we're in full screen mode like that, this button is no longer a page right. This button is now, select the next field or turn on the buzzer or whatever. So there's an opportunity there for creativity and creating some extensibility in the platform so that we can use these buttons for things other than just simply page right, because that's the only hardware option we have. So that when they go into full screen mode, they can do that. They can bind these buttons to do other things. That's also that's kind of a big deal because it really kind of changes the way we use the radio. Okay. Okay. Let's see. I scrolled down past where I was, so give me just a second when I get back up here. Swipe from the home screen, left and right, got that. No plan for up and down at the moment. I did ask about up and down, and right now there is none. There's no plan to be able to scroll up and down at this moment, but it gets a little convoluted, and maybe the screen moves around a little too much for people, so there's no plan to do that at this point. Let's see, full screen bindings, we covered, no swiping. Oh, that was the other thing in the full screen mode. If you do put a widget in full screen mode, let's just take this one. I'll highlight this and I'll click it and I'll say, let's go into full screen mode. Notice that when we do that, we can't swipe anymore, right? So this, basically when you go into full screen mode, they're calling that like application mode. These names may change, but think of it like application mode, where now the application is kind of driving what's going on with the radio. And then to get out of it, you long press the return, and now you're back in your main desktop, as it were. All right, let's see. I think that's it. They do recognize that they need to have some visual confirmation that we're leaving the full screen mode, because it may not always be painfully evident that that's what you've done. So, you know, in this case it is, but it may not be painfully evident that, like, I guess with the Lua script might be a really good example. So here's the Lua script for iNav. If I long press this and I hit full screen mode, right now it's in full screen mode. So the bindings, you know, these bindings can be now, the keys can be adapted to the widget itself. But if, notice there's no swiping, right? I can't go left and right. But if I want to exit full screen mode, I can long press this button, but there's no visual indicator that I've actually exited, but you can tell because I'll be able to swipe. Okay. So that they know, you know, these are little nuances that have to be worked out, because they're really kind of adding a great deal of functionality to the platform. So just keep that in mind. You know, they're aware of these things, and they know this needs to be done. Okay. Model settings. Let's talk a little bit about model settings. Eventually, when you go into model settings, right now there is the ability to say, well, if you're not interested in helicopter setups, you can remove those with firmware options. So when you download firmware, there are certain firmware that just take that tab out. They're looking at making this extensible, and what that means by extensible is think user focused instead of hardware focused. Right now, this is all designed to accommodate the hardware, and you know, you've got inputs, flight modes, mixers, outputs, you know, curves, global variables, special functions, logic. What if you don't want all that crap? What if you just fly a quad and all you really care about is your mixer, so you can see what's on what channel, and maybe a couple special functions, and maybe a logical switch or two, right? If that's all you care about, what they're going to do is they're going to arrange it so that these tabs up top are configurable and user selectable. So that's on the roadmap, right? That you'll eventually be able to select what's visible. Current firmware right now, you basically can dismiss maybe one or two, and that's about it. Let's see. So one example, like I said, was quads. In a quad arrangement, you might say, well, let's take out the helicopter, the mixer, the outputs, logical switches, and just have telemetry and my mixer, and that's it. You know, so the point is you'd be able to choose what you see, and that's a user-oriented approach versus a hardware-oriented approach. So the default will include tabs, but it will eventually be configurable. So I think that's a kind of a big deal. I'm really looking forward to that kind of a capability in the radio, because, you know, in my case, I've never used that tab once. And honestly, global variables, I mean, global variables are really cool, and there are certain planes that I use them, but 95% of the things I do, I don't need to see that. So I really kind of look forward to seeing that happen. Okay, widget setup. Oh yeah, this was a big one. I struggled with this on my first video. So if we go into widget setup, I'm just going to go on the telemetry screen and pick one. The first thing I wanted to show you is this layout view. When I first did this, I said, boy, they only give you one layout. I thought, well, it didn't occur to me to press the button. So you have to kind of retrain your brain a little bit when you start messing around with EdgeTx to say, well, what happens if you see something?
I'm having trouble hearing you.
I think my watch is talking to me. Let me get rid of the watch. Let's get rid of that. Okay. So anyway, I did want to point that out, that you have the ability in widgets to choose your layout by pressing the button. And then another thing that I'll encourage you guys to do when you get these is learn to do the scroll. In this case, there is no scrolling, but I have the option to pick 2+1, 2x1, 2x2, 2x4. So I'll just go ahead and pick 2x1, and there you go. There's my layout for the screen. I think most of you are familiar with that concept, but it never occurred to me to hit the button. So don't be afraid to poke at it a little bit. All right, that's the point. Okay, let's see. So, oh, widgets. Yeah, so let's do something with the widgets. I wanted to show you this one because this is kind of a thing. So let's pick this one. We'll hit select widget, and we'll say I don't know. Let's do counter. So I don't know. I've never figured out what the heck that is. It's a counter. It's going up at some rate. I don't even know what rate that is. Is that 1/10 of a second? I have no idea. But here's the point. The moral of the story is that some of these widgets are implemented in the firmware binary itself. Some are implemented via Lua. Their intention and what they're really thinking very hard about right now is converting widgets so that they're Lua driven, and that makes them accessible. So if a widget is a Lua script, that makes the widget accessible to the community. And oh, by the way, anybody can write a widget. You can write your own widget if you want to. So that's kind of what they're thinking about. And part of the reason for that is because in the widgets, some of these things have not been written well. Like, I mean, I don't even know what that's supposed to do. If anybody knows what that's supposed to do, I'd love to hear it. But you know, there's no interaction with that. You can change, I guess you can change the color. I mean, you know, okay, that's cool, but what, you know, that's the point. You know, some of that stuff has to go. It's dated, it's not relevant anymore, and some of it has to go. Lua versions, if they do move to a Lua arrangement, then you do have the ability to customize, and you know, they put that out there and the community can get their hands on it and go nuts. And that's where stuff like the Fly Me to the Moon comes from. And of course the iNav telemetry Lua that we all know and love, that's where that comes from. Okay, these updates around the widgets are not planned for 2.4 though. So we don't know, you know, exactly when these are going to be on the roadmap. But I did want to let you guys know that this is an area that they're aware it needs work, and they know it needs work. But keep in mind what I told you, right? In the inertial, in the initial releases, they're focused on operational aspects and making sure we have operational perfection, you know, as close as we can get it before they get into, you know, that's kind of a, you know, a display thing, right? So we already talked about widgets being on the desktop, so I'm not going to cover that again. Oh, the quick menu. Okay, let's get out of this. I want to go back to the main screen. There's the main screen. Okay, quick menu. I want to show you guys a couple things about the quick menu. Initially, I thought, based on some reading that I did, that you'd access everything by hitting up in the corner, which obviously does work, but so does anything else with a condition. So this is the tip and trick part. You remember earlier I showed you that these widgets are selectable on the main screen, right? So that widget's selectable on the main screen. You got that nice blue frame. I can select that widget. I can say, well, what if I just want this timer to be full screen? What happens if I do that? Oh, there you go. That's cool. Now, it'd be nice if that widget would expand, right? So maybe that's the kind of stuff to expect in the future. But the point is that these widgets are the thing capturing my finger press. So if I press here, the widget captured my finger, okay? If I scroll over to this screen and say, well, what happens if I press on that open space? Well, notice I got the pop-up. See, if you don't know what's going on, you might say, well, what the heck? That was random. Why did that's supposed to be up here, right? No, what they're saying is that if there's a widget beneath your finger, the widget captures your finger, okay? If there is no widget beneath your finger, then the radio captures it and brings you the quick menu. Another thing, and this is what I talked to you earlier about, consider scrolling. So if you take this and scroll, look at that. How cool is that, right? I never occurred to me to do that. You know, I'm kind of trying to break the mold a little bit from being a key only radio user that I've been using the entire time I've been flying. So you have to kind of retrain yourself. You have to retrain the way your brain thinks. You know, my initial reaction was to say, well, let's take this thing and scroll like that, which works. That works fine, but you can also scroll with your finger. So I'll encourage you guys as you play with EdgeTx, don't be afraid to put your finger on it and move things around. You'd be surprised at what you come up with. And then also notice what they did in the quick menu. I'm not sure if they said this was going to be editable or not. I'm not sure. Maybe. It wouldn't surprise me, but I can't say that for sure. But notice what they have on here. They've got radio settings, screen settings, your reset option, which lets you reset your flight parameters. Where did that go? Reset. Okay, maybe that's not sure what that is. Let's go back to the main screen. Uh-oh. Let's go look at that. Well, I know they're watching, so maybe that's something we can replicate. It wouldn't let me go back to my first screen. Okay, so back on this screen, if we bring up the quick menu, what I was looking for was reset. There's the reset option, and this is where you do things like reset your flight or reset your timer or reset your telemetry. Okay, so anyway, that you guys should all be familiar with that, but what I was trying to get to on this is that the quick menu will pop up anywhere there's not a predefined capture occurring for your finger. Okay, that's what we're after. All right. The idea is to make the quick menu work like phones with this. Oh, that's right. So there was a mention that eventually this might turn into a swipe down kind of affair. So I think most of you are used to a phone where you can put your finger up on the top of the phone and swipe down and bring down like some kind of easy access menu. I think that's something that's being discussed. Like when it actually happens, not sure, but it's being discussed. So yeah, think about your phone, right? That's the best way I can put it. Okay, I think that's it for the quick menu. The key bindings. Now, there's a lot of discussion on key bindings, and I'll tell you guys that I haven't memorized these yet, but if I go into a field that requires some text, so let's just pick my radio. Let's just pick my radio here, and I'm going to highlight that. Now, you can, if you press the model button, you see how it changes the capitalization. So there's that option that's model. There's another option over here. Is it? No, I don't remember. He showed me, but I don't remember. Oh, there it is. If you hit page right, it deletes the letter that's under the cursor. And then again, model changes the text. And then scroll, of course, changes the text. So those key bindings are in place today. Although as a group, they're thinking about whether or not that's the optimal arrangement or not. And they're also thinking about things like the channel monitor, for example. If you guys remember when I was looking at the model, I pressed the model button, no channel monitor. Where is it? So what they're thinking about doing is including something like the channel monitor being bound to the telemetry button, which for most people, you don't really spend a lot of time doing that. You know, once you get your pages set up, this button is kind of a waste. So, and that's not wrong. Not only that, but we also now can bring up the menu and go into screen settings from here too. So the talk is that maybe they'll bind the channel monitor to a long press on the telemetry. So this brings up the concept of short press versus long press. So the current thinking is that while there's no visual impact, you won't see a visual impact to this. But what they're looking at is saying, okay, when we short press the model button, no matter what we're doing, well, it doesn't matter where I am on the radio, but if I short press this button, I want to get into my model settings. If I long press this button, we want to bring up the model selection wizard. So right now, that's not the case, right? Right now, you have to go back to the main screen and then long press, and then, you know, select model, there it is. So what they're thinking about doing is reimagining the way key bindings work so that if you press this button, you always go to model settings. And if you long press this button, you always select your model. And then on the left-hand side, the system press button, if you press the system button, you get into your radio configuration. And if you long press it, it always opens up your tools. So these are the tools. So that's kind of where they're going with that. And then of course, rethinking the telemetry button. And they do have options with short and long press. So I was very encouraged about that because again, they're thinking about the user versus the hardware. It's not about the hardware with these guys. They are thinking about it in terms of the user experience, which brings me to the next topic, and that is colors. So it takes a little while to kind of get used to this, but one of the things you'll notice very quickly, and let me see if I can, there we go. One thing you'll notice very quickly is that they use colors extensively to kind of help dictate what you see and what you're experiencing. And let me just go back to the inputs. Let me go into the inputs, and this is a good place for me to show you. Okay, so here's an example. You see that up in the top left, that index, the 0, 0 is marked in yellow because that's active. So if I take the stick off and I start moving the stick around, you can see that's an active thing. So that means yellow, when you see yellow in the current arrangement, it's active. These colors will be configurable eventually, but right now they're setting it up so that they can get the interface unified, right? That's the objective, is to get it unified. So here's another example. You'll see that right here down on the bottom, all these modes are in yellow. What that means is that this input is available, it's selected for any flight mode from 0 all the way to 8. So if you said, well, I don't want it to be in 0 or 8, it's pretty easy to turn that off. And at a glance, you can easily see that this particular input is only valid in flight modes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? So they're using colors to that end to help with the user experience. You can instantly identify what's active and what's not active. Okay, so dark blue is background. Think about dark blue as being background. Light blue is going to be something that you select. So if you look at this, there's kind of like this lighter shade of blue. It's not light like powder blue. It's a lighter shade. And then there's a yellow color, which is active, and then green is edit. So if you click on, say, a line name right here, and I highlight that, you notice how that field turns, you notice how that field turns green. That's an edit scenario, right? So when you see that green, that's an edit. None of this is a mistake, right? This is not a mistake. And over time, I can imagine immediately how this will just train you, right? It'll instantly train you to say, yeah, I should expect to see green here when I want to do something. One other thing I want to show you in terms of extensibility, which I thought was really excellent, is when I click on the source. Okay, so here's my source option in my input. I'm going to click on the source. On the left-hand side, let me maybe zoom. Well, I don't know. I think I'll just hold it up to the camera for you. That'll probably be the best way. Okay, so you can see on the left-hand side, you've got sticks. These are, the second one down looks like they're going to be pots. So the volume, the 6 position, what I call the backlight. I don't know why I say BAL. I got to change that. That needs to be BKL for backlight. And then the left slider, right slider. So those are your pots. And then the next one down are going to be system options like max and on. And then the next one down are heli options, so for cyclic. And then the next one down are trims. Come on. Oh, hey, there we go. See, they're trying to figure out when it comes to the touch, we have to find, we're trying to find ways to repeat if there's a touch error, how to make it repeatable. So that was a good one because I was just kind of scrolling through the options, but I'm going to go ahead and close this because we kind of need touch for that to work. Okay, so let's try this again. I'm going to go back into my model settings, back to inputs. We'll edit this one, and I'm going to go back to the source. Okay, so there we go. I'm on cyclic now, and then here's trims. So trims is a source. Now you can kind of see I'm getting to the bottom, right? Here's another one that's just switches. So one of the problems is that when you first bring this list up, when I first click on this, this is a list of everything. And you can see that the scroll bar over here on the side scrolls down. So it's a list of everything you've got. Now, one of the issues is that when you hit one of the filters, there's no way to go back to everything. So the only way to go back to everything is to exit out and then bring up the list again. They know about that. They're going to work on it. And then on the filters here on the left, there are my switches, and then there are trainer switches. And then notice that what happens if you scroll. This is why I tell you guys, I'm going to encourage you to put your fingers on the radio and try scrolling. Try. You know, you'd be surprised what you come up with, because here's a list of filters and there are more. So there are more there. And that's the objective, right? Is to look for additional places for these filters and touch the radio, move things, you know, try and scroll around and move. So you'll be surprised at what you find in there. And then another thing I'll point out about that entire interface that you just saw They are completely aware that for bigger fingers, this is it can be challenging. They know that, and they do expect to expand the vertical space. Now, whether or not it's scalable or they have DPI scaling or a zoom slider, I don't know yet. I don't know how that implementation is going to manifest itself, but they are aware that these things need to be updated, and they will. Okay, so that's on the roadmap. Okay. All right, as far as the interface goes, there will be, this is confirmed, there will be a virtual keyboard, which, yes, you know, I just can't, yes, 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 yes. So awesome that there's going to be a virtual keyboard. So imagine, you know, you click on this thing and you get the, let's try that again. Let's try line name. So you click on this field and when you do that, it pops up a virtual keyboard, and you just, you know, kind of just like text messaging, right? You peck out your answer, right? So that's going to happen. That's confirmed. The selection filters, we just covered that, so I think we're good there. Yeah, I just kind of got ahead of myself a little bit, but we're good. Okay, next one, item groupings. This is another one that might be, when you first look at it, it might be a little confusing to you, and I wanted to make sure we walk through this. So notice here we are in model setup. Okay, now if I scroll down, I can go through this entire list of things that everybody's familiar with in model setup on OpenTx, right? If you've used this radio, you know this. So this is the model setup area. Now, let's say in timer one, so notice in timer one, we've got timer one that starts here and kind of ends there, right? So if I click on this field, what happens is I wind up, and when I first did this, I thought it was a bug, but it's not. It was by design. I just didn't know that. So notice what happens as I scroll. We get down here to persistent and it scrolls back up to the top. That's by design. So what's happened here is they've set up a grouping. You see that cursor right there, that blue line? That groups all the fields in timer one, so that if you just want to edit timer one and you scroll, you guys have all been there with the scroll wheel. You go past where you want to go and you're halfway down the bottom of the list and you got to go all the way back up. What this does is it offers a constraint for just that grouping, okay? And if you're done, say once you're done with that, then all you have to do is hit the return button and your cursor moves down to the next one. If you hit return again, you go back out to the main menu. So they're thinking about the user, right? They're trying to think about usability, and it's different, right? It's going to take a little time to get used to these things when you first get these radios and software, right? But it's going to take a little time. You might have to, but you'll pick it up, right? It's not a bug. They're trying to do things by design that focus on the user. So I understand the nature of what's going on there, and you'll see that implemented in other places too. That's not the only place. Switch state was another one. So like here, if you go down to the bottom, you see how this little group of switches is highlighted. So remember what we were talking about earlier with active and inactive. I can tell instantly by looking at that SA needs to be up, SD needs to be up, SE needs to be up. If they're not, I'm going to get a warning. And then if I click them again, SE is middle and then SE is down. And if I click off of that field, I can tell instantly by looking that I have 3 switches that are being monitored. That's such an improvement over prior, which was, small row of text, and you're looking going, what is that? Is that up, down? What is it? So very, very cool little upgrade there. Let's see, flight modes. I want to talk a little bit about flight modes. It's right here. This data layout needs to be revisited. They're aware of that. There's a lot happening on this screen, and it might be a little bit difficult to kind of get centered where you want so you can see what it is you want to see. They're aware they got to rethink how this is presented. This is just where we're starting, but that is a area for development work. You know, they're aware of that one. Curves. I want to talk a little bit about curves. I actually mentioned this in my first video, and I said it would be really nice. You know, when I looked at this, the first thing I did was I put my finger there and I wanted to drag. Like, you know, that's the first thing that I wanted to do. And I whether or not they had planned it or they looked at what I did on my video and said, oh, that's a great idea, I don't know, but they said they're going to look at it. So I think what we're going to probably wind up with is this hybrid model where you use your finger to kind of put in your rough curve the way you want it, and then there's maybe a number pad where you can tweak it and make it precision. So expect more to come there. There'll be a little bit more work on the curve side. Logical switch layouts will be reworked, taking too much vertical space. Let me go back into logical switches. When you start putting stuff in logical switches, you'll kind of see it, but what they're saying is that it's when you start building out these logical switches, it's taking up a little too much vertical space. So if I back out of this, I just made one up. There's nothing to it. But when you start filling these things out, you'll see that gets populated real quick. So they're going to rethink the layout and what they can do to tidy that up. Another thing I want to point out too, in case you guys were unaware of this, is categories have been removed. So if you go into, we'll do a select model. Notice that there is no category option anymore. That's another conversation that I had with one of the lead developers about categories. And I think they have a strategy. I don't want to give away too much because I don't want to commit them. I don't want you guys, and by the way, anything you hear on my videos, you can't go back to them and say, well, John said you were, no. I don't run the show. They run the show. So let's be real clear about that. I want to be very clear about it. They run the show. It's what they want to do, not what I want them to do. So I just want to, be clear about that. But I did have a conversation with them about it, and there's an idea that says, hey, we can make a filter list. So we put a filter list together to say, hey, Warbird, Crossfire, Quad, whatever. Then when you're making your model, that list that you can edit should be selectable. So that's kind of the current thinking, but stand by. That's all I can say. What I will tell you right now, just so you avoid surprises, if you're a big user of categories like I am, there is at the moment in RC2, this is RC2, there's no support for categories at this point in time. So just be aware of that. Sounds. I want to talk about sounds because there is a fantastic young man by the name of Eater. And Eater is just killing it on the sounds. So I want to give you a quote. When I first started talking with him about sounds, he said, my goal is simple. We're going to have a sound pack that covers our needs, and you'll no longer need to search for packs on the internet. Clearly, it's a reference to Amber. We all know and love Amber. But the reality is Amber hasn't been touched for a very long time. The world has kind of progressed, right? It's been some years, right? New flight computers, new flight modes, iNav came out, Betaflight came out. So I as politely as I could, I said, Eater, we really need to have voice prompts that match the modes of all the popular flight computers like Betaflight, iNav, and even the standard stabilizer only that offer things like manual mode, stabilized mode, and auto level mode. So being the killer guy that he is, he said, that's now our #2 issue on sounds, which I thought was just amazing because these guys are really trying hard to make this platform awesome. And so Eater jumped in, he goes, yeah, I can see why you guys would want that. So like, think about servo auto trim, right? To me, that was on iNav. If I was in auto trim, I kind of want to know that. If I was in auto tune mode, I kind of want to know that. And right now you kind of have to bumble your way through it. I mean, I know a lot of you guys are advanced. You can make your own sound files. I know that, right? I know how to make my own sound files too. But the reality is that's always one of those things where I thought, it happens at 11 o'clock at night, the night before I go flying. I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to make a sound file. So, and not only that, I don't want 5 different sound files. So what they're doing is they're using neural voices. So these are generated voices, which means if there's a known gap, they have the ability to go create more, and they're going to be consistent. And I'll also point out that Eater, I'm not sure if he had carte blanche here or not, but he introduced the voice that we have on the radio as Emily. And it's an Irish accent for the English speakers anyway. I can't speak to the other languages. I can only speak to English because it's the only one I understand. I couldn't tell you a Turkish dialect accent if I heard one. But he did say Emily has an Irish accent, and it's beautiful. It's a great voice. It's working great, and he's on it. I'm going to tell you, this guy is on it. He's killing it. He wants to make this the best sound pack ever. So he's got some work to do, and he knows that, but he seems really eager and interested in his work. So I cannot wait to see what he accomplishes. So anyway, there's some work to be doing there, right? YAML, I talked about YAML a little bit. That's the plain text, a modern format, easy for humans to read, and editable in a standard text editor, okay? So next thing I want to talk about are some requests. These are things that I've asked of the team, and what, I can't, guys, I know my way around OpenTx. I've got a YouTube channel, so what? You know, all I can say is that I've got a lot of experience using the radio. So I see things that maybe not everyone else sees. And I know there are a lot of people who see things I don't see. So all I can say is that as I've seen an opportunity and a desire for them to improve the platform, I've made some asks. I've simply said, hey, could you guys take a look at this? That's it. Now, whether or not they run with it or use it or implement it, who knows? That's up. Like I said, they're the boss. They run the show. I'm simply making suggestions. So here's what I'll tell you. I've asked for a couple of different things. One of them was telemetry sensors. If you've ever added telemetry sensors, you know that the units of measure is dictated by the sensor, and it doesn't respect the system metric or imperial units that are specified in the system. So if you go under model setup and you go down to the bottom and you select imperial and then you add widgets, if the widget is configured for metric, it doesn't respect that field. So I've asked them to see if they could maybe make some adjustments there so that units of measure refer to the system-wide unit of measure selected by the user. So I've asked for that. We talked in some detail about key binding for text edit. So it was already on their mind though. So it's not like I didn't produce anything new here. They already had that on their mind. Another thing that I asked for, and I think this one got some traction with them right away because they understood the nature of the problem, and that was on the output screen. If you've ever had to go in and configure Betaflight and reduce your min and your max, you know that the way you do that is you click on this thing, you edit it, you scroll this one down, you scroll this one up, and then you hit escape and you go down to this line and do it all over. I said, is there a way we could at least just repeat it for the 4 primary channels? Because, like, you know, in Betaflight and iNav, it's always really, in my experience, always the same. So if we have 1,000 on the low end and 2,000 on the high end, 1,500 in the middle, and we have to adjust these outputs, is there any way we could just say, hey, for channels 1 through 4, set it at negative 97 and 98, right? Can we do that? So I've made that request. Audio prompts to match the flight modes. I already talked about that. I mentioned that I in conversations with Eater, I said, hey, you got to fix the flight modes. Flight modes for flight computers are kind of a hot mess right now. They need to be married up to what's available. And I didn't, you know, I said, look, if it's on the modes tab in Betaflight or iNav, or it's got to be a sound. You got to have a sound for it. Now, I don't want to get into a debate on who uses turtle mode. Who cares? It doesn't matter. You know, somebody does, and if it's there, we should have a sound file for it. Extensible model filters. We kind of talked about that. That's the one where, you know, if you're looking at your model select. Oops, sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm still getting used to this format too, guys. So I'll tell you. All right, model select. So in here, that was the extensible format. So you could choose what filters you wanted to have. So if you said, here's one to think about, right? What if you said, I want to see my models arranged based on protocol, like Crossfire. So for example, if you have a Crossfire module, I have Express LRS in this one, but if I had a Crossfire module in there, maybe I'd want to see Crossfire and D16 and D8 and DSM, right? Maybe that's the way you want to see things. The point is that that's that user focus, right? The whole point is to focus on the user versus the hardware. And so that was my request, is to say, hey, when we talk about filtering, can they be extensible, meaning user managed, and then, you know, easy to manage and then apply to whatever model. So they're looking at that. And then one other thing that I asked for was a look at the under the hood at the SD card read and write speeds, because in prior radios, OpenTx, even though I get good cards, man, my SD cards are not cheap. You know, I spend the money and I get the, you know, the ultra cards, but even with those, I've had problems where I've loaded up model screens and the thing will just sit there for, I don't know, seems like 6 or 7, 8, 9 seconds just clocking. And I've done some experimenting with allocation sizes and some other things, and I gave them my data. I told them what I saw. And I said, is there any way we could at least just take a look under the hood at what's going on with the SD card so we can evaluate whether or not we've got the fastest read-write speeds? And they said, yes, they'll take a look. So again, I don't know if that manifests itself in an outcome or not. I don't know. But those are things that have been on my mind, in addition to all the other things that need to be worked out. And keep in mind, I'm not talking to them really right now about you know, fixing the red circle. I don't care. They don't care. Right now it's about operational performance. And, you know, over time, you'll see EdgeTx grow into its own. You will see that. Okay, so that's it. That's my top to bottom. Now what I want to do is I'm going to roll back up to the top, and I'm going to go ahead and put the chat. I'm going to put the chat window up so you guys can see it, and I'm going to give you guys a little eye candy while we're talking, and I'm going to do my best to answer your questions. Remember what I said though. All I can do is my best. I don't you know, I don't know everything. I'm certainly not the smartest guy on this platform. That would be the developer crew for sure. So let me go ahead and see if I can take your questions now, and I'll scroll back up and let's take a look at what's going on here. Okay, so let's see. Freddie first in, interesting topic. Well, glad you made it, Freddie. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Bill, Four Eyes. Let's see. Robert, NH Jim, Dragon Killer. A lot of hellos there. I'm trying to scroll down to questions. Let's see. Jerry, sorry, I want to know an OpenTx 16S, does the touchscreen work on first generation as if the same touchscreen will work? I don't know anything about generations on TX16S. I would imagine that one surefire way to figure it out is to try. Yeah, flash it and see. You know, you'll know pretty quick if it works. But I'm going to submit to you that if your radio hardware supports touchscreen, that it should work. Okay. Robert says, I love that screen. Me too, man. This is really cool looking, right? That's very advanced. And that, again, this is one of the developers working on the project. And you can see the way they think about things, right? That's got to be one of the most modern things I've ever seen on an OpenTx radio. I got to stop saying, see, so all my career flying, I've equated OpenTx to this form factor radio, meaning not Spectrum, not Detrum, not whatever, right? So I have to break that habit. This is an open source radio now. It's no longer an OpenTx radio. This is an open source radio. It's now an EdgeTx radio, and I have to learn that. But yeah, this is definitely the most modern thing I've ever seen on a computerized radio transmitter. It's simply awesome. So you guys make sure you visit his website and keep an eye on it. And when he makes this thing available, you got to help him out and buy him some coffee for his work, because it is really good. Okay. Very important note, because we need to know that the model convert to Edge and that it won't convert back. So we need to take a backup in the event. Yeah. Elias, 100%, man. And you know, that's why for these conversations, I've said immediately, first thing you do is backup, or, you know, like I said, maybe just use a different SD card and that'll work too. Let's see. Robert is doing the like whip duties. Thanks for that, Robert. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through questions, guys. I like fancy widgets, little script to take the whole screen like iNav. This is Fly Me to the Moon. Looks interesting. Yep, very cool. I was skeptical of usability of a touchscreen, but this looks very handy. Yeah, I think, Steve, this, you know what I kept saying about the touchscreen, to be honest with you? I said it's like a bowl of popcorn. Popcorn is one of those snacks that when you say, hey, who wants popcorn? Nobody says they want it. But if you put it down in front of them, the bowl's gone. I think touchscreen, it's going to be a lot of the same, especially as we start getting acclimated to using the touchscreen. You know, when we start getting used to doing that, man, that's going to be the thing. That's what everyone's going to do. So, yeah. Let's see. Any heli I touched died horribly. Okay, I'm going to keep reading. I was thinking of taking one to the field, terrorizing my buddies. Hey, so yeah, speaking of terrorizing your buddies and using these radios with Edge, my understanding, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to. In fact, if you guys look right here, there's more about this coming up. My plan for this device when I am ready to talk about it is that's going to be the most modern quad with the most modern flight computer, with the most modern transmitter, the most modern transmitter radio, and the most modern operating system on a radio that I can come up with. So this is going to be the state of the art kind of setup. That's what I'm after with that little thing sitting over there on the left. We'll get to that in a little while, but that's the idea. At any rate, the reason I mention that is because from what I can gather, there have been a lot of reports out there that it flies fine. There haven't been any not that I've been lurking and reading. I haven't heard of any reports of flyways or broken radio links or anything like that. There have been some little nuances like you've seen tonight, but not, the developers have focused on the radio link always getting the top priority, which is correct. So even if you have some interface issues, the radio should be okay. But in any event, I'm telling you, this setup is the one I'll be using to fly this device when it's time. Okay, let's see. Spares, I'm looking at spares. Touchscreen would be awesome on the Tango 2. Tango 2. 53 watching. Screen lag from the LCD or the software firmware. Early gen yeah, I think Heart Pilot says is screen lag from the LCD limitation. Well, I think it's a lot. Like I said, they haven't really done any real work. See, I saw that before too. There's escape, and now I'm back at the screen, but when I touch it, it's almost like it pages out. I hope the guys are I know they're watching. But it seems like when I page out, I can't get out of this. Even if I long press. No, that's an interesting thing. But like I told you, that's beta, right? That's beta. So we can't, I don't even necessarily hold that against EdgeTx. That could just be a function of that script being a beta script that still needs some tweaks here and there. Okay. But as far as the lag goes, there are two things that I would say, Heart Pilot. One is that this is the first iteration. And so they haven't done anything that I'm aware of for optimization. At least they haven't made it a project yet. All right. So, I think what we need to do is just let them do their thing. And I think what'll happen is they'll do things like, maybe reduce the graphics demand. Maybe they'll find ways to take shadows out of the equation. Maybe they'll find ways to prioritize the touchscreen itself, but it's not terrible. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I've seen far worse. I mean, I've driven cars with far worse than that. So, that to me is, I don't see a problem. I mean, sure, maybe it could be, it's not a 60 hertz, refresh rate, but who cares? I mean, it seems okay. I don't really have an issue with that. Let's see. Now all we need, Plain Crazy says, now all we need is a lot less buttons. Well, I think that's one of the things you get with the touchscreen, especially as they refine the interface, is that you do get away from the buttons, right? You start getting to a point where everything that you do on the radio is based on where you want to be doing it. That's not going to work because I don't have an TBS Crossfire in there. Express LRS does work, by the way, and I'll show you too, in case you guys were wondering. This is another thing that, see, you don't see this, especially if you don't know these things, you don't know about this, but this is Crossfire shot. And the thing I want to show you is that if I highlight that packet rate and bring it down to 100 or 50, you see up top when I hit enter, watch what happens to that number. See how that goes to 100? That's Crossfire shot, man. That's integrated in the firmware from day one. That's kind of a big deal because in OpenTx, if you want that, you're in as of today, to the best of my knowledge, you're in a nightly. So, we'll see a lot of this kind of thing happening. Like they're incorporating a lot of leading edge stuff here. Where's the model create GUI? You're asking maybe about the wizard. I really don't think there is a wizard yet, but let's try. If we go into model create, I'll do create model. There is no wizard launch. So all we did was we got an icon with model 4. And that's it. So we're in that model. There's model 4, and there you go. But to be perfectly honest with you, for me, I'm not, look, when it comes to wizards, I know a lot of people like them. Personally, I could care less. Because the way I use my model setups is I create a template, and I have like a fixed wing template, a quad template. And what I do is I just duplicate that because I don't want to start with a model set. It literally would make me freaking crazy to think that I had to start with a model setup wizard every time I created a model, man. That would just drive me nuts. I always use a template. So I know some people like those wizards. I believe they're overrated. But whether or not they intend to add wizards back, I couldn't tell you. I haven't asked. Again, it kind of shows you the importance that I place on it, I guess. Let's see. EdgeTx is very intriguing. The touchscreen access is the reason I want a TX16S. The bling is why I went with the Max Edition. Yeah, man. If you get a Max Edition TX16S and you put this firmware on there, and then you load that Fly Me to the Moon widget up there, it's just Like what? Like people in your field are going to go, what is that? It's a whole lot of power for not a whole lot of money. That's all I can say. I hope the theme support makes it out of the background. So TCM 3D, that theme support, yeah, man, that's one of those things we got to not like that's not a thing, right? The theme, it'll come when it comes. I care about the radio being rock solid, and so do they. So they'll get there. Just trust that they're working hard, man. I can tell you that I've been hitting those guys at all hours of the day and night, and there's always somebody working. Always somebody working. So I can tell you, have faith. These guys are working hard. Will there be an EdgeTx mobile app for non-touchscreen radios? NHGem, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, EdgeTx is supported on non-touchscreen radios. In fact, I installed it on the T8 Pro. Oh, I got to disconnect this quad. I installed EdgeTx on the T8 Pro, so it does work on non-touchscreen radios. Now, in terms of the app, you know, I was actually having a conversation with one of the guys about connectivity, like Bluetooth and wireless connectivity. And it's certainly possible that at some point, you know, if they can integrate Bluetooth, that you might see something like that. So all I can say is at this point, Jim, I don't know. TCM 3D says Edge seems to be a bit more agile in design philosophy. Oh yeah, for sure, man. These guys have a very warm attitude, right? I've seen people come into their environment and ask questions and they just jump right on it, and they're like, yeah, okay, that's a problem, let's fix that. So very warm and welcoming, and they absolutely have a very modern mindset because they're thinking about things like the graphics, the colors, the unification across the operating system, congruity with the button presses, you know, key bindings that are consistent and focused on a user experience. So, you know, they're definitely taking a fresh point of view, no question about that. Yeah, they are very focused on agile development, no doubt. Yeah, the end user, clearly, yeah, man, that's definitely their focus. Brutus laughed at Irish. I don't know the joke, but I like the accent. I think Emily has a sweet accent. It sounds good. Can you demo Emily? Sure, yeah, I could demo Emily. Let me see. Let me think of the best way to do that. Well, here, how about if I just turn the radio volume up, and I'll wonder if that'll let me play with the sounds. Let me just see. Let me see if I can run one. Yep, I can. How about that? All right, one other thing I need to do is turn the volume all the way up. Okay, I have the volume all the way up. Okay. All right, I've got the volume all the way up. I'm going to click on the sounds directory, English, and I'm just going to play a couple of sound files for you guys. So I'm going to give the microphone to Emily, and I'll just play a couple. You guys let me know if you can hear it. I'm going to turn my mic way up, too, so we can make sure we get the best sound for you. So here we go. Now, you guys tell me if you can hear Emily, okay? So I'm going to watch. You guys tell me if you hear it.
Macro mode on. Amp.
Oh, amp.
Degree Celsius. Crow on.
Crow on. That was a little fast.
Crow off.
Crow off.
Degree.
Degree.
Engine off.
Engine off.
Flaps up. Flaps down. Flight mode 1. Flight mode 5.
You guys hear that? Okay. There's an example. And you can download the sound pack, by the way. No, it's not a thick Irish. No, it's not thick, Brutus, for sure. But it's definitely there. If it's definitely, it sounds Irish to me, but of course I'm not Irish. So, it doesn't sound like Native American. I can tell you that. Well, I shouldn't say that. You guys get my drift. Okay. Don't bust my chops. Okay. Let's see. Let me scroll back up here. TMC 3D, thanks for hitting the tip jar, man. That's very nice of you. I appreciate it when you guys do that. Thank you. Very, very kind. Kay Anthony says, I really like the look and sound of EdgeTx so far. Thanks for all the info. You're welcome, Cantney. I hope it's been helpful to you. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I'm going to be flying it on a new quad with some equipment in it. It's not going to be a cheapie. So I'm gonna go out there and do it. Ahmad says hi from Malaysia. Hello from Florida. Welcome. TMCD, thanks for the info, John. You're welcome. I'd not seen that widget screen before. Yeah, man, isn't it cool? I know. I kind of had to beg a little, but I don't mind. I don't mind because I thought that is really, really good looking. That's a good looking screen. So yeah, that is pretty cool. Again, I can back out there. See, that's the way I would expect it to work. So maybe there's some work to be done there. But yeah, that's definitely a cool looking screen. And obviously, it's not like this is a year away. I mean, I can't tell you what his development cycle is, but it pretty much works. So, I did some testing with it today. It's pretty good. So I'm pretty impressed with it. Let's see. Z-Bear, nice layout, tons of detail. Yeah, it is a lot of detail. Carl Giggler says, hi, I'm new to TX. Should I update to Edge now or later? Carl, all I can tell you is that from the information I've been able to gather, there haven't been concerns or reports of significant problems. There have been nuance issues, like you even seen on this video today, but the radio lock seems to be fine and the operations seem to be fine. People are coming in and reporting. I flew 10 packs, 5 planes, everything worked. So all I can say is that if you think you're going to invest in EdgeTx and that's the system for you going forward, I would just start easy. Start with something that is easy to replace for you and go from there, and get to know it a little bit. But as far as reliability goes, I have no reason at this point to believe that there's a reliability issue. So there might be some nuance with configuration, that kind of stuff, but I'm not seeing an operational concern at this point, which is why I'm putting it on one of my quads. So Christian says, hi there, I updated TX16X to EdgeTx, and I have a problem where a lot of the UI text doesn't show. For example, folders and models setup text fields are just blank. Yeah, so Christian, there's probably going to be some growing pains. Very hard for me to be able to answer that question. What I would do if I were you is try and maybe start from the bottom up rather than work on a conversion. Maybe take a look at what happens when you set up a new model and see if you can kind of migrate that way. Right now, we know for sure that they're like when it comes to migration, things like the home screen settings are lost, right? We know that. So maybe what you're experiencing is some challenge with migration, but you might have to start with a new model. If that's problematic for you, like if you have 45 highly complex models, you might just want to try bringing over a few at a time and waiting for the migration process to mature. And as it matures over time, I'm sure it'll get a little bit cleaner and they'll import every single thing that they can. I don't have enough depth under the covers to be able to give you a better answer than that. K. Anthony says, if you're new, possibly hang back a little as they seem to be updating. Yeah, the updates they're like I said, guys, they're working rapidly. I mean, I went in and I told them about a GPS overlay issue, and I mentioned it. Within an hour, they gave me a link to a firmware and said, try this. I mean, it was within an hour. So it kind of blew me away. That's how fast they're working on this. And, obviously they've got work on the nightlies. Right now they're on RC2 already. They're hoping for a final candidate, the first release to be sometime around Monday. And there might even be another release candidate between now and then too. So I expect at this point a RC3 and then probably the final sometime early next week. Robert says, Drone Pilot says, I got a hardened glass 9H, I think, screen protector because I'm prepping for Edge. Yeah, that's probably a smart call. When I tried to get the show all widget on a full screen page, it was telling me the screen is too small. Let's try that. I know which one you're talking about. Let's see if I have anything. Let me go into, so I'm still trying to teach myself to use the new ways, right? So screen settings, there's one. I'm going to go ahead and add one. We'll add it. I'm going to select layout and I'm going to pick full screen. I'm going to turn everything off. Turn everything off, and then we'll do select, whoops, do select widgets, and I'll click on that, select a widget, and it's show all, right? I don't even see show all. I don't even see it. It's not value. Yeah, I don't see show all on mine. Widget settings. Is it? It's not in here, is it? No, I don't. I think that's its own. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that is its own, the show all. And I'm not seeing it. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Sorry guys, I don't know about that one. I know which widget you're talking about. I've used that plenty. I'm not sure though. I don't see it in here as an option. Gauge, model, outputs, not outputs. Text, timer, value, counter, ghost, timer, TXGP test. I don't even know what that is. And then ghost. Yeah, I don't see the show all widget. Maybe that are you using an SD card left over from an OpenTx? Maybe you have widgets from OpenTx in there. That might be the problem. So sorry, buddy, I can't take you past that one. I don't know. I don't see it. Let's see. Bill says loud and clear. Okay, awesome. TM3 says TMC3D says yeah, we can hear just fine. Good. 1LN sounds good. Not very thick Irish accent. Yeah, we covered that. I think her speech rate could stand to be slowed by about 5%. Yeah, that'd be interesting too if because once they have, one of the cool things about once they have the neural voices all programmed out and they have all the prompts they want, if they want to make a change, it would probably be very minor effort, even for the end user to feed the audio files through another engine and slow things down. So I'm sure that could be done. Let's see. Conor McGregor voice pack. Yeah, don't know. Again, I don't know. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they'll make the raw data available. I can't answer that. I mean, that's purely speculative on my part. Possible. Can I boot it up with that fancy UI? Not the one that I was showing tonight. That's a piece of beta software. So not there yet. Boz says hi from the UK. Love the look of the Edge navigation. Yeah, I do too. I do too. I think, and like I said, keep in mind, this is round one. They're just getting started. They're doing a lot of cleanup work where they're fixing code that needs to be fixed, and they're gutting old stuff, and they're working on getting bugs out of the system. So they've got a little bit of both going on, right? Where they have to get rid of old stuff that's deprecated or not working correctly, and then they have to migrate in the new at the same time. So it's quite a project that they've got going on. I give them a lot of credit for what they've accomplished so far. All right, well, hey, that's the end of the questions. That's the end of my content. I don't see any reason to keep pushing through. If you guys don't have anything else you want to know, then I think this is a safe place to call it a video. I hope you enjoyed the content. I hope that you kind of got what you needed to understand about what's going on with EdgeTx. And all I can say, I told you guys I'd be keeping an eye on this. I've said it a dozen times. I will be keeping an eye on things. I will be experimenting. I will, continue to keep the latest version on my radios, and I'll continue to test and learn it so that we can get a good library of information about the best uses of EdgeTx out on YouTube for you guys to have as reference. So, keep an eye out on the channel. That's all I can say. If you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. I want to make sure that I say thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel. You guys help me, move forward and keep the channel going. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks for doing that. And I want to extend the invite if you're so inclined and you like the information you get on RC video reviews. I've got a patron tier that's $3. So for about the price of a cup of coffee a month, you can help me keep making videos like this. So if you're willing to do that, patreon.com/RC video reviews. And that's, I'd appreciate it. So thank you for breaking down RC2. Great content. You're welcome. Happy belated Father's Day, John. Thank you, Bill. Same to you, my friend. I make a cameo right at the end. Glad you can make it, Chris. NH Jim, good thumbs up. Thank you for that. All right, guys. Well, that's it. I think we're done for the day. Keep an eye on the channel. There'll be more of this. There'll be more of this coming, and they're working at such a pace. We just don't have a choice. If we don't stay on top of it, we're going to get left behind. So that's all I've got for today, guys. Take it easy.